It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to this wonderful talk, which is basically about how the country needs to respond once the lockdowns, which have been for a lot of people very unexpected, and for many crores of people also, at least in the short run, devastating. So what we are essentially going to talk about is about the concepts and ideas that Mr. S.K. Joshi, Dr. S.K. Joshi has developed, looking at his vast experience over the years and also the emergency that the world is going through. And of course, his responses are more for India. But I'll come to a formal introduction of Dr. Shailendra Joshi in just a bit. The context of this whole interview with him is that we at Indian School of Business, and we also have a center among many other centers called the Center for B2B Marketing. It's called the ISB CBM, Center for Business Markets. And our mandate is to try and get some research output from time to time, which is more focused on practice, so that practitioners can actually use it. The ISB CBM is actually a collaboration or a platform which enables collaboration between industry and academia. And we are happy to say that this center, which has been around for about a year now, has gone from strength to strength, thanks to the phenomenal support of our Dean, Professor Raj Srivastava, and several other senior leaders of ISB. And today we are actually, once the current situation eases, we are geared to rise to greater heights, of course, with a lot of modification. With what those modifications would be, I think we will get a deep understanding while discussing with Dr. Shailendra Joshi. With this, I will formally move to a formal introduction of him. He is an IAS officer retired. He happens to be basically the advisor to the government of Telangana. He was the former chief secretary of government of Telangana. That was his immediate posting before when he retired. And he's in fact the immediate past chief secretary. He's one of the leading environmental experts in the country, and he advises a large number of infrastructure projects, both government and I'm sure that private in such large projects would also be dealing with the government in a PPP mode. So large-scale infra projects and development activities in India. He has a unique strength, which is to take up very complicated projects, execute them on time, and execute them within budget. He has represented our country in many, many international forums on environment, and he's also the national focal point on climate change. Now, these are all burning issues that the world is facing, and India is going to face a lot of the brunt of many of these issues, things like water, pollution, environment, ecology, then the deforestation. And there can't be a better person than him, who has spent more than about 45 years or 40 years in the civil services, working with the top leadership of states and the center. His institutional affiliation is a graduate from IIT Roorkee and IIT Delhi, and a PhD from the Terry School of Advanced Studies on intergovernmental fiscal transfers and environment. He's been an outstanding civil service officer, and he actually joined the civil services in 1984. So it's roughly about 36 years in the civil services. With this introduction, I want to really thank him for joining this interview or discussion. It's a great honor, sir, to have you here with us, and you do our institute proud by sharing your views. The fact that we are anchored in Telangana and of course in Mohali, but Telangana is where we have our center of gravity at ISB Hyderabad. So it will be very, very nice to hear your views on one, the state, and of course, you have a much broader picture on the country. And our focus will be how does the country bounce back from here? All would agree that, in fact, our country has done far better than many, many advanced countries in terms of coping with the COVID 19. And everybody is quite euphoric about how can such a complex and densely populated country actually have escaped with so little, relatively speaking, of impact, negative impact. That's on the health side. But obviously, on the economic front, there's been a huge beating like every other country. So we can't think of a more appropriate person than you to actually tell us and through us to the world of corporates, government, research institutions, academic institutions, management schools, of what should be the recovery path for the country post COVID-19. With this, I'm ready to ask you a few questions. And for the benefit of the viewers, I have a total of 8 questions. The whole discussion would take about 40 minutes or 45 minutes. While the discussion is going on, I may have some supplementary questions as well. So welcome, sir, once again.
Thank you, Professor Seshadri, for generous introduction. I am privileged to be with you today to share some of my views. I am happy to respond to your questions.
Thank you, sir. So the first question is, for the benefit of our viewers, kindly explain what was the original concept of Swadeshi. This concept has been around for a long time. So if you can just talk a little bit about the origin, what it meant, along with the historical perspective of this movement and what it has achieved for the country, that will be wonderful. The reason is, going forward, anybody who is watching the current scenario will say that countries are going to become more insular. They're going to say, why do we need to depend on, for example, our big neighbor, China? How can we, in fact, increase our own self-reliance? And therefore, you have actually written extensively about this concept of Swadeshi as it is relevant going forward. But for the viewers, it will help to have a historical perspective. So I would request you to elaborate on what is Swadeshi and how it originated, what was its role.
So it started with our independence struggle. Mahatma Gandhi and the leaders of that time were asking for 2 things. One is Swaraj, that is self-governance, and second was Suraj, that is good governance, what we in the today's parlance call. So they were in 1905, it started with Swadeshi concept, and the immediate provocation was bifurcation of the Bengal state into East Bengal and West Bengal. It was basically a socio-economic movement, and Mahatma Gandhi gave the call for boycotting foreign goods, and instead of that, use charkha, use khaddar, khadi, and all those things, basically aimed at reviving Indian village and cottage industries. Charkha, that is spinning wheel, became the trademark or symbol of Swadeshi. Later on, Swadeshi has taken many avatars during the past 70 years. It started with self-reliance. There were calls. But unfortunately, Swadeshi, in my view, remained by and large a symbolic, because whatever our cottage and village industries, neither in terms of quality nor in terms of prices, they were able to compete with the larger industries. Subsequently, some of the governments thought about import substitution, so that whatever country imports can be prepared within the country. In 2014, when the present government came into power, they thought about Make in India, and as a part of it, ease of doing business. So Swadesh, Suraj as Swadeshi are working hand in hand. Now this opportunity is there for us to, as you rightly said, more and more country will become insular. So can we make use of that? That is the big challenge which I would share with you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. So, actually, from that perspective, going forward, I think India has a head start because we have already experience with Swadesh of about 70 years, although some of it was lip service in the recent past. But in the original, probably couple of decades, it was serious, initiative by Mahatma Gandhi and his colleagues. So, for what is the future of globalization post COVID-19? What will happen to existing agreements between countries on matters of bilateral trade through mechanisms such as WTO, which so far hitherto have been very binding, so much so that many countries have arm twisted even India to say you can't violate WTO, including China when it keeps dumping steel and so many other things. What is the likely trajectory of the new global order? How is it going to unfold? This is all a very, very loaded question, but our viewers will be very, very interested to see because you're coming from deep experience in policy making and implementation. So it will be nice to see. And you have actually been in the recent past talking about this Swadeshi 2.0, which is a very intriguing topic. So that is something which you have made a lot of writing. You've given talks across the country. So it will be nice to hear from you how this old Swadeshi will metamorphose in the new world. Over to you, sir.
Say this present crisis has really thrown entire world's economy out of gear. No country is spared. And as you rightly said, different segments in the society, somebody could cope up with for one day, somebody could cope up for 1 month, and the poor and unorganized sectors have really suffered a lot. So the issue is, let me explain it from the point of view to individual agreements. There is something called force majeure, act of God. When suppose a company has signed agreement with a government or someone else to complete the project, they will not be able to project, neither labor is there nor other things are there. So my take is that the countries would first pay attention to handle their own national economies. After that, like there were many open-ended issues before this crisis also, like Brexit, what would happen to EU, WTO was also not a concluded kind of a form. So these, my personal take is that all these agreements will take a back seat or maybe renegotiated or start once again. First and foremost, all the countries will set right their own house in order. Now people say China. China also has suffered because entire export market, there is no one who will be able to buy those things. So ultimately, this is entire world which has to share the burden. And my take is that it will insulate countries. Already there are some movements like Western countries, they are worried about the takeovers by Chinese companies. So they are setting their own house in order. So similarly, India also has to set right our own house in order.
So, what would be Swadeshi 2, or maybe those would come up when we talk subsequently? But coming back to this question, do you expect the world, powerful nations, to actually punish China, or that is not going to happen? Just a very quick response before I transition to the Swadeshi 2 through subsequent questions.
Say, my take is you can punish a person who is weaker in power. If someone is stronger in power than you can't punish. You can accommodate, you can adjust, but you can't punish a more powerful economy. And that Chinese with their billions of dollars, trillions of dollars reserve. I mean, I don't see. Only thing is, there may be some exodus from industries, from China. There may be exodus of some other things, but punishment, I don't agree that international community is in a position to punish China.
Thank you, sir. And also, they have a phenomenal military might, which is probably amongst the strongest in the world
So
today.
that's what I said, economic and power, real power.
Right.
So you can't punish.
The next one is, what opportunities can India leverage for its advantage in this new world order? Uh, just to highlight for our viewers, from about 1990, India has been flexing the services muscle, especially IT, ITES. And that has been taking us quite a long distance. But going forward, how do you see what are the opportunities that India can leverage, especially given our Prime Minister has been talking about it since 2014, Make in India, and that was more, I would say, probably a lip service compared to what is seen on the ground, because China was always a magnet for manufacturing.
See, I would remember Sir Winston Churchill. After World War II, he mentioned never let a good crisis go waste. So it's a very good crisis for India at this juncture, which is one of the largest economies in the world with population, with internal market. You can't say the same thing to Bangladesh or to Nepal or to Sri Lanka. We have the critical mass which we can take opportunity, utilize in this. So Swadeshi 2.0, instead of that, I will call Swadeshi Plus, because 2.0, 2.1 will come, 2.2 will come. Swadeshi Plus, we have to follow an ecosystem based approach. Where we failed earlier, we were focusing on individual initiative. We never devoted attention on ecosystem. Suppose if you have to start a company, from where the raw material will come, from where the people will come, from where the supply chains are there. So that kind of concept was missing in our past approach. So I will say Swadeshi Plus, in my view, is 5 points. Number one, follow ecosystem based approach, self-reliance in maximum possible sectors. You can't say ki only this sector. Some sort of a assessment should be made that which are the sectors we want to be self-reliant. Then three things are there: economies of scale, cost competitiveness, and quality consciousness. I remember those days when village and khadi industry boards, for our welfare hostels, we used to supply their soaps and other consumer products. And with the lesser amount, quality multinations companies, they were able to provide those products. So that becomes a burden. If you can't compete in terms of cost, in terms of quality, I will say that it is not fit item for Swadeshi. So
Sir,
basically what we need is paradigm shift in governance. So that is the most important, otherwise we will miss this wave also as in the past.
so, follow-on question. You have come up with this unique idea of Swadeshi 2.0, which you're saying is better called Swadeshi Plus. Of course, you have elaborated what you have in mind, but could you talk a little bit about two related issues? How did you zero in on this concept? I mean, there are thousands of intellectuals in the country looking at how India should, respond post COVID-19. And this is a word that you have coined up, Swadeshi Plus or Swadeshi 2.0. So how did you come up with this intriguing idea? And actually a related question which you may choose not to answer is whether the country at all levels of political and bureaucratic uh, realms actually has the political will to one envision what that Swadeshi Plus is that you have in mind, and then to implement it. The second question you can, if you like, defer or choose not to answer.
No, I will respond to second question. There are situations which you can overlook, but the present situation is that when the economy is in such a shape that you can't ignore that any longer, you have to take drastic measures. In fact, my take is that as important is the medical emergency, So are the issues, socio-economic issues in the country. A separate task force should have been working, I am sure, at the national level. They must have planned and they must be working on how to revive economy, different sectors, because different sectors, I mean, except for video conferencing and some more sectors, everything else, you name the sector, economic sector, which has not taken the beating. Everything from top to bottom has taken a negative turn. Like, for example, take the construction industry. In our state, it was one of the fastest growing industry, and there was attention towards commercial properties. Now, my take is that again people will change towards residential, and residential also should be office come residence, what we in our parlance used to call camp office, whereas some special room you will make with all these network facilities, conferencing facilities. So the entire world, the way we knew before the January, February 20, will going to change for a long time.
That's a brilliant, actually, insight. I never thought of it, although I keep, in my position at ISB, we keep tracking. But what you're saying is there'll probably be a considerable slowdown of commercial and a pickup of residential. And the way residences are going to be looked at is to facilitate work from home, so office come residence. So the amenities given that those rooms in the home will have to be child-proof, in the sense the crying of the child outside should not disturb, or somebody should not be able to barge in and so on. So that's a wonderful thought. It's actually a great signal for real estate people to rethink. And this is probably also an invitation for every industry to rethink. So I'd like to move to the next question. What is the future of the high-tech industry in India in the emerging scenario? Just as a preamble, we've been very good at software and services, IT, ITES, and so on, but not so much in hardware, which we actually yielded the whole turf to largely China and Korea and such countries. So, how do you see high-tech industry in this scenario where every country is like trying to become self-reliant, self-dependent, and so on?
Say, traditional argument was India is manpower surplus country. So we need not invest in high-tech sectors. But this COVID crisis has come as an opportunity where now most of the industries, we have to go for more automation in order to have the social segregation and separation. So high-tech, I will say ki robotics would be one area. Now, reluctance of migratory labor who used to work in Surat or Hyderabad, they will not come. So any sector, now we have to come some sort of an innovative approach to see that our resources, our efforts match up with the labor quality and labor supply. I'm sure this is going to be a very, very different type of things. Earlier, every child used to go to school. Now, I don't know whether schooling has to be in a different form. And whatever this thing is there, the daytime father can use that residential office, and maybe some part of it son or daughter can use as a school. So we have to medical facilities, everything. So more and more automation will take place. I was also handling this issue of reluctance of manufacturing, high-end manufacturing sector. So it's like you say that you do the post-graduation without doing your 10th class or 12th class. So we have to follow the entire circle, and the cycle could be expedited by leapfrogging. But unfortunately, it was various reasons we did not bestow any attention, and that is our weakness. So I would say this Swadeshi plus, we should go for ecosystem approach where manufacturing is also there, high-tech industry is also there, and we should low-end software. We have to go towards some high-end. It's a pity that all the major companies have Indian CEOs and heads, and we don't have any large company within the country. So this is also an opportunity because people were talking about there may be some migration from developed countries, especially Europe, our scientists or IT experts, those who were working. So even they are there or they don't come back, there is a time we should integrate them into a possible network and see what kind of innovation, what kind of new products we can launch in the country.
Very good, sir. Two related questions as you were talking popped in my mind. The first is you mentioned that the migratory labor, let's say from the north or northeast or whatever else regions, they won't be very excited to come back to Surat or Hyderabad or such places. So, what will be the way that they will have their income to stay afloat in the context that they choose to actually stick around in their native towns or villages or regions?
So that is the thing I mentioned, that country cannot ignore. Suppose labor comes from Bihar or Jharkhand, they have to find alternate opportunities, Manrega or whatever productive assets you can create. So massive relief program in those areas, because those people who are stayed away from their homes for 2 months or 3 months, as and when this lockdown is over, all of them would like to go back to their native places. And once they are there, they may be there for 6 months, 1 year. So entire economy which is based on migratory labor, this side also we have to look for alternatives, and where the migratory laborers have gone, that side also have to be made arrangements for them. So no government can ignore this kind of situation.
Thank you. Related question also, you mentioned that high tech, it's a pity that most large global companies are now headed by Indians, which was unthinkable 30 years back. But we don't have such scale of companies which are India based. And you also mentioned that there's possibility to engage with some of the Indians in developed countries. Maybe they come back, maybe they choose to operate from there, but can we network them into our ecosystems? Do you see a lot of xenophobia developing in the Western world, countries like European countries and USA, where they say these are all outsiders, bhagado isko, just get rid of them. Is that likely to happen with everybody trying to protect their own skin and turf?
That brings me to the son of the soil theory.
Correct.
So even in various parts of the country it is there, internationally it is there. This is a normal human tendency. But as the economy grow and we see ki with Mr. So and so's presence, we are getting some more money, they don't mind. But the moment we feel the so and so's presence here in my country or my state is causing negative problems, so this xenophobia starts. So it's a natural human tendency. We have to see, that is again bringing back to Swadeshi. You are in your own desh and do whatever you can do to increase the productivity.
Very nice. So, what other industries do you think will benefit from the new order? And what are the industries that are going to be mauled and badly bruised in the new world order post COVID 19?
My take is more of a negative news than positive news. You name a sector, the only industry which will increase is communication and digital technologies and hand wash and sanitization and making masks. And as far as negative list is there, that is going to be very large, whether tourism or public transport or low-end IT sector. Our IT professionals also have to be ready to be sitting on bench, because that low-end IT demand will also go. Fast-moving consumer goods will go automobile sector. So I see more of a negative trend than a positive trend.
That's a very dismal but reality of what is unfolding before us. So it points out the need for everybody. So far, when the economy was going through a slump or whatever, the retrenchment of middle class in India was not so visible. Generally, the guys at the top would be, their heads would roll, and of course, large numbers of others in the lower economic strata. But I think we have to be prepared for a scenario where this post COVID 19 recovery will not spare anybody, any socio-economic strata, because even great companies like Tata, which are quite averse to retrenching people, I'm just taking that as a name, but I'm saying many great companies in India would also probably come to a situation where there are no alternatives but to lay off large numbers of people. And that puts a challenge on everybody on how to cope with it, how to reskill, and so on. The next question is, what are the barriers and challenges along the way that India must address in order to gain from the new opportunities stemming from the new world order?
If you look back, India is always considered as a positive destination. But when a investor or manufacturer comes to India, we find that very soon they get disillusioned. What is the reason? We have to change the complete image makeover. The way we run the business can't be done any longer. So what we have to create is a agile institutional network which can take quick decisions, which are responsible for implementing those decisions. So the existing system of governance has to go for a sea change. We have to create some special purpose vehicles or missions or whatever you may call, where the CEO will have the 5 years or 3 years responsibility. Unless something negative is there, he or she will continue. Otherwise, in our system of transfers, retirements, this, that, nobody is having any accountability. Similarly, we have to change our political thinking, what you call. So, if they have to survive, they will also go for fast development and with the reformed institutions. So basically, the next agenda before India is transforming governance and make use of this opportunity, which is lying before unfolding, going to unfold before us very shortly.
Thank you. This brings me to the very last question, which probably you have already touched upon just now, but there may be some supplemental points you'd like to highlight. What should be the institutional support and governance mechanisms at the country and state level for the country to benefit from these opportunities? So we have different realms. There is the political system, the bureaucratic system, the private sector, the judiciary, so many arms, and you're an expert in having navigated through all these systems. So, any words of advice of what should be the institutional support and governance mechanisms at the country level and state level so that the country benefits from these and not like what it used to be for many decades? And this is why part of the reason why perhaps the foreign investors have shied away. That there's a lot of nice talk, but when it comes to implementation, you already mentioned that people shy away because there's all sort of hidden agendas, and without sounding very negative about it, whatever is being outed as pious intentions don't get translated on the ground for reasons that we as Indians know, and that's largely because of hidden agendas, vote-based, vote bank politics, and multiple other nefarious forces. So, your reflections on this, having been at the helm of affairs for so many years.
I would like to say centers like yours are going to be the trendsetters. So now the partnership, Prime Minister, when he joined, he talked about Team India, where state government, central government, private sector, public sector, but follow-up action has to be taken on that. Similarly, like industry, academia partnership, innovation, I think our biggest strength is innovation. If you recall those Thali days last month, somebody came with a fan which used to beat Thali. You might have seen on social media. So our fellows are very, very innovative. You may call it jugaad, call it innovation. So we have to allow the innovation to flourish. Normally in our society, no mistake is permissible. If success is there, you are supposed to be successful. If you are some shortfall, failure, it's not accepted. So we should now change our mindset and we should allow innovation and these partnerships to flourish. That is the going to be, in my view, the solution for our country.
Thank you, sir. It's very insightful. Maybe I'll just leave the floor back to you for a minute to reflect on any other important words of advice that you can give to the viewers, if you, in closing, on this whole idea of Swadeshi Plus, imparting some advice that youngsters or people, managers, senior leaders in corporates or government or wherever can actually pick up.
Basically, my message is whichever position, whichever sector one is, please go for out of box thinking, go for put your best in the, give back to the society, and nation will work on individual synergies. So if we work in a uniform direction, the nation can progress. But if we work in different directions, everybody normally tendency is in our country, we consider government as omnipotent and omnipresent next to only God. So that mindset also should be changed. Government should be facilitator, and each of us, each one of us, whether we are common laborer or highly qualified technicians, we have to do our job in a proper manner, and we have to take in a out of box kind of a thinking to do our jobs. That is my message to the people.
Excellent, sir. I sincerely want to thank you for actually joining this discussion. It's very valuable, and as ISB CPM and as ISP, we will leverage your insights by making sure that these are properly reach targeted audience. Once again, a sincere thanks for your very insightful.
Thank you for giving me opportunity. I am sure all of us put together, if not all, some of the ideas Swadeshi we would be able to implement, and Swadeshi Plus would have a better success rate than original Swadeshi. Thank you, sir.
Very nice.
Thank
On that positive note, let's end this discussion with a sincere thanks on behalf of ISB, ISB CBM, and my personal behalf to Dr. S.K. Joshi. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you, sir.